He was wearing a leather jerkin, Matty realised as they made their way unsteadily around the corner of the barn, into the main yard. It was keeping the worst of the rain off. The mud was worse on the way back across the yard, the accumulated dust of the summer now a sucking, soupy mess that reminded him of the trenches. He sometimes thought he wasn't ever going to be comfortable with mud again. A definite issue for a farmer. At the kitchen door the man balked like a horse put to a too-tall fence. Rob stepped ahead and opened it, stepping in and taking his coat and cap off, whilst Matty said, "It's all right, come in out of the wet." He encouraged their visitor forward. Eventually he took a tentative step across the threshold, and Matty followed him into the warmth and light of the kitchen. Rob was pumping the lamp, and it flared up, illuminating the room and their inadvertent guest, who was gazing around cautiously. Matty hung up his wet clothes as Rob poured a glass of water and offered it to the stranger. "Here, drink this. You were desperately sick." The other man took it and sniffed cautiously, then sipped. "Thank you," he said. His voice was soft and his accent was peculiar. "I mean you no harm," he added haltingly. "The gate—" He paused, head tilted as if he was listening. "The gate was protected, guarded," he corrected himself, and then he sneezed. Sit down," Matty insisted, suddenly aware of how awful the stranger looked. His face was pale and his lips blue-tinged, and he was starting to shiver. Matty pulled out a kitchen chair and pushed him down into it. His knees buckled and he went down all at once, looking queasy again. "I apologize," he muttered. Matty met Rob's eyes over his head. Rob nodded toward the kettle. "Let's get your wet things off, lad," he said, using his kind sergeant's voice this time, as he moved to help to do just that. Matty put the kettle on the hob and turned back to see Rob wrestling the weapons and bag off the young man's shoulders. And he was young, Matty could see now, in the better light. He was tall and skinny, with a thin face and blondish-brown hair that was further darkened with the rain. It was coming out of the plait, and he kept pushing it back behind his ears. The leather jerkin came off to reveal a shirt of some sort of linen material underneath. That was at least dry. Rob hung both the jerkin and the scabbard up on the pegs behind the door, as if he did that every day, ignoring the young man's protests. Matty proffered the warm towel that hung on the rail in front of the range, and he passed it over his face and then scrubbed at his hair before combing it back with his fingers. "What's your name, lad?" Rob asked, taking the towel back. "Lynn. My name is Lynn, of the Frem." He paused and tilted his head again in that listening motion and spoke stiltedly. "The gate. It will open again. I have to close the gate." He gestured to his belongings. "I need my things. I thank you for your help. I need to do it now." He went to stand, but Rob pushed him back down as Matty made the tea and passed the mugs. Lynn of the Frem took his despite his protestations, cautiously wrapping his hands around its warmth. He took a sip and twisted his lips before taking a proper mouthful. Matty sat down at the other side of the table. "And so, Lynn of the Frem, what are you doing here? What was that light? And what do you mean about a gate?" Rob was quiet, but he meant business. He stood close behind the other man and wasn't going to let him rise without some answers. Matty could see it from the set of his shoulders and the way he leaned against the rail of the range, arms crossed. Lynn seemed to realize that he wasn't being given any quarter either. The lamplight chased across his face, and Rob's. Lynn looked sharp and soft in turns. Rob looked intent. His eyes flicked to Matty's across the waiting space of the room. "The gate," Matty murmured softly. "What does that mean?" Lynn tilted his head again and looked at Matty. "Your brother?" It was as if he was tasting the word. "Your brother knew about the gate?" Matty blinked, startled. Yes, I think so." "His writing—" He gestured to the piles of papers. "He wrote about a gate, about keeping it shut." He swallowed. "Was that what we saw just now? What was it? Where does it go to? Where are you from?" He felt like a fool. The man had appeared out of empty air, except the air hadn't been empty. It had been filled with light. Lynn took another mouthful of tea and shook himself like a dog. It was a visible gathering of his wits.